Welcome to another edition of St. Joseph Radio Presents, and I am your host, Ray Gerard, and with me in the studio today we have a special guest. His name is Dave Buehrle. Dave, welcome to our program.
Thank you.
Dave has some new accolades to go behind his name now. He has just recently been named the Catholic Man of the Year in St. Louis. So St. Joseph Radio every year puts on a dinner, and in advance of that dinner, we put out invitations to parishes all through the St. Louis Archdiocese to nominate people to be the Catholic Man of the Year. And we get these nominations that come in, and then we have a dinner. And at the dinner, we hear a little bit about all of the nominees. And it's really interesting because there are so many people in our community who do so much good work, and they fly completely under the radar, and you have no idea what they're doing. So often we get news, and all you hear is the bad stuff. You never hear about the good stuff. And this is one little way that we at St. Joseph Radio have to try to tell people a little bit about some of the good stuff. And but with every kind of award like this, there has to be a winner. This year it was Dave, and he was a very fitting winner. And we're going to hear all about what he does. But before we do that, we'd like to begin the program, as we always do, with a prayer. And as we always do, we offer our guests the invitation to do such a prayer. So, Dave, if you'd please lead us.
Sure will. In the name of the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Dear Lord, I want to thank you for bringing us all here today. Thank you for the work of Catholic Radio. Thank you especially for those who serve our church, for all those who continue to stay under the radar, that really hold us together. Thank you for our priest and for our congregations throughout the Archdiocese of St. Louis. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And the Father,
Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Yeah. I mean, it is important to thank him for our priests. They do. And they are, so often taken for granted, and, our other group of people who fly totally under the radar. But this week, lay people, just, like yourself, who do so much good work, and we'll get into that. But before we do, perhaps maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself. You raised Catholic, for example?
Yes, so I was adopted, born and raised Catholic, adopted through Catholic Charities. My mom and dad adopted myself, my brother, and my sister, and we lived in a nice home in St. Charles. My mom quit her job and became a housewife, and my father worked extra hard to pay the bills.
Now, did your mom and dad, did they have any kids of their own, or they just opened their home to children they adopted?
Yeah, no, my mom was not able to have children. So
right.
After a couple of years, they prayed to St. Gerard. That's what my middle name is, and they had me.
Well, he's a good saint. So my last name is Gerard, so I can't say I was named after him. But anyways, I guess you could say all saints are good.
I would think good. That, right? I would think so. Yeah.
But he's a good one. But anyways, so you had three brother and a sister growing up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And raised in the Catholic Church.
I was Catholic school, Mass on Sundays, server. Back then, we did a lot more serving than they do now. Like, we were on a schedule, and sometimes we went and served Mass before we went to school. So things have changed.
Get up early in the morning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. And so Catholic school, grades 1 through 8, that sort of thing?
Yeah, grades 1 through 8, and then I went to a Catholic high school. Then I finally graduated and went in the military.
Ah, okay. So how long were you in the military? What did you do?
4 years. I was a security policeman in the Air Force.
Ah. Oh, so you're one of those guys that everybody else liked to see coming.
Yeah, well, I guess it depends.
All right. And then after the military?
I moved back to St. Louis, and My dream was to be a policeman, so that's what I really wanted to do. During that time, my mom and dad briefly, their whole goal in life was to go like cross country in an RV, and so that my dad retired. My mom came down with cancer,
No.
and then she passed away. So that all happened while I was back here. So that's kind of how things went.
So that was like soon after your dad retired?
Pretty soon. I mean, she got sick fairly soon. He was able to do a few things, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they never really had, what they really were thinking that they were looking forward to. Well, that's
Right.
obviously a shame.
no, it was a surprise.
Yeah. Okay. So then in the police force for a number of years?
36 years now, 36 plus.
Oh, wow. Good for you. And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
All right. So as a kid growing up, faith-wise, anything in particular, or just pretty much just like every other kid?
Pretty much like every other kid. We church on Sundays and fried chicken in the afternoon and listen to my dad's country music every Sunday afternoon. But I mean, like, that's what we did, so.
Yeah, country music. I grew up in the Northeast, but went to Nashville. I went to Vanderbilt for law school and fell in love with country music. It's very easy to fall in love
Right.
with. Anyways, all right. So faith wasn't anything. I mean, you did it because what? Because you were supposed to, right?
Pretty much. I mean, it was back, back in those days, you didn't ask a lot of questions. And there were still nuns, and they were still nuns, and so we just did what we were told, and
Right.
that was it. Yeah.
Right. And then, as you got to be a young adult, I mean, what was your faith life like at that point?
To be fair, once I got out of the house, moved to Texas, I became a free man,
Uh-huh.
and I just sort of took my own path and kind of left the church and my upbringing behind. I really did.
Okay.
For an extended period of time, actually.
Okay. And something bring you back at some point, or was it gradual, or?
So you'll hear me talk a lot about my father because he's literally was my mentor. He's been dead 3 years now, but I watched him go through so many things, and he never wavered. His faith never wavered. Now, internally, I couldn't tell you what was on the inside, but outside, he was cool. You know what I mean? And former Marine, Purple Heart veteran, so he was just that guy.
Really?
Real mild-mannered speaking guy, but he just never wavered. He was in Mass all the time, religiously. So I kind of watched him from a distance. You know what I mean? Even though I wasn't living that lifestyle, I was seeing it. And it kept me, every year we'd go to White House retreat.
Every year?
Every year.
The family?
Me and my dad, and then he has an extended family. They're all of his brothers. They've all passed. Now it's just my cousins, who still run it very well, by the way, on that weekend. But even though I wasn't attending church, even though I was doing my thing, every year at White House I went. So
You're not going to say no to your dad.
No, I will not, no. And to be honest with you, the Jesuits were pretty welcoming for me, even though I was kind of a mess. They still welcomed me back, come back. So I just kept going.
Oh, that's good. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, are we skipping over? I mean, you married?
Yes.
So are we skipping? I don't know chronologically where we are. Are we skipping over that a little bit, or?
Yeah, no, yes and no.
Okay.
Once I came back and my mom had passed, then my uncle got sick.
Now, before we
go ahead.
Before we move on,
Yep.
because before we went on air, you were telling me a story about your mom's passing,
Right.
and your dad's reaction, and it was, I don't know. I'd like you to retell that. For
Sure.
us.
So, on my mom's final day, we all stood around her bed and we said a rosary, and you could tell she was about to pass, and then she did. And then we all kind of walked out of the hospital like anybody would, kind of blank, empty. I took Dad home, took him to the house, and we went in the front door, and he went in the bathroom, shut the door, and I could hear him through the bathroom door crying. And he said, I'll never forget these words, my God, why have you forsaken me? And I thought, oh, man, my dad's, he's slipping. I mean, and it got quiet, and then he said, not my will, but your will be done. And he came out of the bathroom, dried eyes, and said, okay, we got to do this.
Just like a Marine.
Correct. I mean, he was just steady. You know what I mean? He wasn't. If he was mad at God, I sure didn't know it. And
right.
and so that's how he went on. So we put her to rest, and my dad liked his beer, so he had a nice little thing of beer in the basement. That anyway, I won't tell you my stories, but at any rate, so and he ended up meeting a Southern Baptist lady who, when he would go on his walks after couple years, and they ended up dating and getting married.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we didn't think it would happen because she didn't believe in alcohol, and I didn't see how my dad was going to give up beer. So they agreed to put it in the basement. So they came up with a plan. So he kept it in the basement, and then that was his thing. So, but she's wonderful. Her name's Alice, and she's still alive. She's in a retirement community now, and after my dad passed about 3 years ago, it was pretty rough on her. So she's had a rough go.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get back to you then. So you got married.
I did.
Okay.
I have 3 older children. My oldest is 36, and then my youngest is 12.
So
we may not have a full hour to discuss all that, but go ahead.
Well, I've got some kids, and there's quite an age gap, and there's quite a story there too. But okay, so. And you're talking about, your faith was waning at a certain point. Was that still the case when you got married?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. It was that marriage was not based on any type of Catholic faith, to be fair. I mean, we were young, and it just wasn't going to happen. So
okay.
I just continued to kind of live my life. I think it's easy. I'll speak for myself, not for the profession, but I think it's easy to get into a profession like law enforcement, and you start missing things. You know what I mean? And you become kind of callous and kind of hard. And
I would imagine.
And so you just survive.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you shut some things out or whatever, and just.
Oh, I probably shut a lot of things out. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, when you got married, your wife was not necessarily that much in terms of. I mean, was she? I don't know. Was she Catholic or was she?
She was, but neither one of us really were. We kind of just
active in the faith, you might say. Not active.
At all.
Yeah,
not at all.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Going to mass? Not going to mass?
No.
Not going to mass. Okay.
No.
And your children, were they from? I mean, so you've been married once, or?
No, so I was married, and then I went through the annulment process.
Okay.
And I recently was married 5 years ago.
Oh, okay. Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. Okay. So, so then, I don't know, I guess, at what point in your life did you, start feeling a need to, when you say.
So there was a couple of things that happened. So the CHIRP program, the Christ Renews Parish.
Right.
That turned my life upside down.
Somebody talked you into doing that?
They did. And I almost didn't want to go.
You didn't want to go?
No.
I have heard this story many times.
I did not want to go. But it did something to me that I'll never forget. And that was, oh heavens, 16, 17 years ago, I guess now.
Okay.
And these guys who I never met in my life were just fantastic. And I heard their stories, and I was like, wow, these people are no different than I am.
So, so at this point, when these guys were inviting you, did you know them through your parish? How did you know the guys that invited you?
I started going to mass. I started going to like morning rosary, kind of on my own.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't really know why. I suspect all my uncles up in heaven were saying, "Come on, man, it's time. What are you doing?" You know,
this guy down there, he's a slacker.
What's he doing? Right. I believe that.
Yeah.
And it was just something I felt like I needed to do. And then I saw this thing in the bulletin about some kind of men's retreat, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not going to do that." Nah. And then some guy grabbed me and said, "You need to do that." And so I said, "Yeah, maybe I do." And anyway, I almost didn't go, but I went, and I'm really glad I did.
So it was that easy? Somebody approached you and said, you got to do this, and there's a little resistance, but not too much?
Well, and when we get to the Acts retreat years later, I can tell you about another one. But anyway, no, so
So let me just step in and break you off right there, because I need to tell folks that this is St. Joseph Radio. This is St. Joseph Radio Presents, actually, coming to you live from St. Louis, Missouri, which we proudly proclaim is the Rome of the West. And we're here today with our guest, David, who has been named the Catholic Man of the Year for this current year here in St. Louis. And we're going to be finding out exactly why he earned that special award, although he's shaking his head because he thinks he's not deserving, as basically everybody who wins this thing, matter of fact, everybody gets nominated, kind of have the same reaction. So that's nothing uncommon, but that still goes to your credit. Anyways, so you went on this chirp retreat, and you thought it was life-changing?
It definitely was. I actually saw myself from the inside out for the change. I actually broke those walls that I think I built over the many years in law enforcement. And I actually cried, which I'm not a crier. That's one thing my sister would attest to, that I don't show emotion or feelings.
Right.
At least back then, when my mom passed, I was a different guy, very stoic, But at any rate, it really broke me down. It broke my heart, my soul, and I knew that I needed forgiveness and I needed penance. And I went to confession for the first time in a very, very long time, and it just changed my life.
How'd you feel after the confession?
Relieved. Yeah. It was a long confession, so if anyone's out there, I apologize. But
Yeah. Okay. All right. So Chirp started making you. I mean, during that weekend, you've thought about like where you are in your life, where you've come, that sort of thing.
Well, I did, and I was sitting in this room with all these people. None of them were cops, but one that I knew. And I thought, I don't have anything in common with these people. They don't have a clue what I've been through or what I.
Sure.
And I was wrong. I was 100% wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. People do have all kinds of issues and problems, and you never would guess.
No.
You never would guess. Okay. So then, what are things like after that?
Things like that were good. I mean, I started becoming more active in church. Constant attendance, way more than Sundays. I mean, it was Monday, Tuesday, whenever I could go before I'd go into work.
Really?
I joined the St. Vincent de Paul Society, which was really cool. And it was really kind of interesting because in the community that I'm at, I was literally helping people through the St. Vincent de Paul Society that I was also dealing with from a law enforcement angle.
Sure.
Very unusual.
Sure.
But it really broke it built some relationship, but it really helped me see a different side.
Yeah. So, because in your profession as a law enforcement officer, you're just putting people through the system. Whereas with St. Vincent de Paul Society, that gives you a tool, that gives you a resource, something,
right.
And then you can actually, try to help like the person, right?
I did, and it was interesting because I started finding myself carrying a briefcase in my police car, and I'd have like prayer cards, prayer booklets, gift cards for food, Bibles. I gave away my favorite Bible to some lady. I don't remember who that was, but I was just started doing things like that. And it started becoming very natural. You know what I mean? Like I just enjoyed it, and I look forward to meeting and talking to people.
Yeah, because once you start with just a little, and then it gets easier and easier to do it. I mean, at first you probably feel it's kind of awkward, but then the more you do it, the easier it gets.
It got easier. It's unusual because it's not. And I'll be careful. It offended a few people, I believe. You know what I mean? So I was kind of talked to about, you need to calm down. Don't be talking about your faith. Don't be talking about it at work. Don't be sending out Jesus emails, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So, but that's okay. I figured it out.
And so after, these suggestions were made to you, then what? I mean, did you keep doing it somewhat?
I did. I mean, I can tell a secret, right? Nobody's listening.
Nobody? No.
No, but I would just keep it quiet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or did you maybe feel out the person, get a sense for whether or not they might be receptive?
Yeah, but I mean, I probably started paying a little more attention to body language when it comes to if people really they didn't want to talk. So it probably taught me a good lesson too.
Yeah. But with the people that maybe were offended, there had to be other reactions as well, I would imagine.
There were positive, some to the point of, what has happened to you, man? Did you hit your head type thing,
Yeah. But I mean, didn't some people sort of, I had an experience recently where I was at a business conference, and I got to talking with some guy, and we got onto some subject, And I said, I'm just going to, warn you. I said, my attitude on that particular subject, I said, I'll let you know I'm religious. Well, that just opened this floodgate. And he proclaimed himself basically an agnostic, but wouldn't stop talking, kept asking me questions. There was a real hunger with this guy. And I'm thinking, some of the people you deal with or that you did deal with, they have life issues, life problems, life's beating them on the head. I mean, were there occasions when people were very glad that you kind of, opened this area?
Yes, absolutely. There's been, interestingly enough, when you go on like a scene of somebody who's passed away, a dead body, right? Mm-hmm. If the family's there and you see crucifixes on the wall and statues, or they make comments about God or Jesus, it took a burden off of me.
Right, sure.
Versus a different house that has none of that, and then it's like, man, they're missing it. What do I say? It's empty. And so, yeah, it was able to allow me to help kind of ease their pain, and I think it kind of took it off me, if that makes any sense.
So even in the homes that wouldn't have any visible sign of any, faith life, you still had a desire to try to maybe talk to these people. I understand maybe sometimes maybe you were careful about it, but you still had that desire.
And it was really simple because it's an easy thing to say, like, would you like me to call you a chaplain? We have a police chaplain. Would you like a chaplain? They may, yes, I would. Is there any certain denomination you'd like us to call? Well, I'd want this. And that, a lot of times that worked too. That helped a lot.
Sure. And I suppose we can talk about one particular story. There's an occasion which I know was mentioned actually at the award dinner, where was a young boy outside a convenience store.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So it was about 3:30 in the morning. I was on patrol, and I was driving around the back of a convenience store, and there was a young man sitting on a little stoop, juvenile. Certainly shouldn't have been out after a curfew, right? So I asked him what was going on, how was he doing, and you could see he was a little apprehensive at first, and I just said, you're just what's happening. And so we started talking, and I think he could see that I wasn't going to jump out and arrest him, right? You know what I mean? So he broke down kind of and told me that his dad was dying of brain cancer, and he and his mom had got into it, and he didn't want to go home, and so we talked a lot, and I said, listen, why don't I just take you home and let's meet your parents? So I drove him home, and I met the dad and the mom, and you could see Dad was nervous. He's
Cop showing up at the...
Well, and he's drinking coffee because he knows he's dying. He doesn't want to sleep, and there's a lot going on in that family. You know what I mean? And so we sat at the kitchen table and talked about everything that was going on, and I threw out, do you have a faith life? And he mentioned, well, I used to be Catholic. And I said, well...
used to be.
I said, well, what do you mean used to be? And he's like, well, I've fallen away from the church. And I'm like, that's okay. I did too. It's fine. And we kept talking. And he actually, at the end of the conversation, agreed to meet with one of our Catholic chaplains. And he actually received all the sacraments.
Wow.
Went to confession.
Wow.
And got his final blessing. And
that is so important.
Yeah, huge.
That is so important. And, maybe you don't want me to say this, but that wouldn't have happened without you. Maybe it might have happened anyway, but I'm sitting here listening to this story thinking, it could very well be the case that may never have happened if you hadn't stopped and taken that kid home.
And I don't know that I would have done that 20 years earlier.
Sure.
If that makes any sense.
Sure.
So, yeah, for God to be able to use me, I guess he could use anybody, but yeah, it worked, and it was interesting. And so the gentleman passed away.
Yeah.
And I promised him, the secret I'm going to tell you is I was training a guy, and he was dying, and I took him over to the house, and we prayed a rosary in uniform with the family at the dad's foot. And I promised his dad that I would take care of him forever, his boy. And I made the probation officer promise he'd never tell anybody, and I don't guess he ever did, but he was probably freaked out. I don't know. But anyway. And so then the young man, he actually asked me to speak at his dad's.
So you made a promise to take care of this man's boy.
Correct.
Wow. That's a big promise.
It has been. There's been some challenges, but we're still in contact this very day.
How long ago was this?
It would have been 15, 16 years ago.
Oh, wow.
It's been a while.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so keep going.
No,
let me
so
stop
then
you.
he asked if I could speak at the funeral, And I mean, I don't know anybody in this family, you know what I mean? So I'm getting up speaking to people about, I don't know anybody. But it's interesting because after he was buried, then I started going and visiting his mom. And I actually started bringing her books and talking to her about her faith life. And gave her a couple rosaries, taught her how to say the rosary. And then unfortunately she passed holding that rosary. And the young man reached out and told me his mom had passed away, and I wanted to know if I'd speak to her.
Was she young? Were they older?
No, they were probably in their 50s, I guess, 50s,
But
60s.
still, that's relatively
That's
young.
I think it's really young right now.
Yeah, so do I. Wow. Okay, so you helped bring her back to the faith.
Well, I wouldn't say, but I mean,
Well, you helped.
I worked at it.
Yeah.
And then I ended up speaking to her funeral as well, and now I'm getting to know the family. You know what I mean? Like, they're actually remembering me, and I'm like,
You must have done a good job the first time around.
no. So anyhow, so we've maintained a relationship to this very day.
Wow. Okay, so tell me a little bit more about the boy. So the boy had he had these problems with in his house. I mean, it was things were difficult. But he had problems of his own.
Sure. And I mean, he went through all the trials and tribulations and still struggles with certain things. But he's not afraid to reach out. He will reach out when he needs something or if he just wants to talk. Occasionally we meet for breakfast, kind of catch up. We've invited him to Mass a couple times. He's come with his kids.
So you're going to be able to. That's the music that tells us we're coming up on a break, but we're going to be able to continue this story, and I want to hear more about this story when we come back from this break. This is St. Joseph Radio Presents, coming to you live from St. Louis, Missouri, the Rome of the West. And we're here with our special guest, David, who was named this year as the Catholic Man of the Year in St. Louis, which we only give out to a few very, very, very special people. But anyways, we're here more about his story when we come back.
Joseph Radio with a great gift idea, a St. Benedict bracelet, a trendy accessory for men, women, and children that not only looks good on everyone's wrist, but is actually armor for the spiritual battlefield. This unique bracelet is handmade in Europe and contains 10 medals within the braided cord in the adult size and 7 medals in the children's size. On the front of each beautiful medal is St. Benedict holding a cross in his right hand, the object of his devotion. On the back of each medal is a cross. Surrounding the back of the medal and cross are the letters VRSN MVSMQLIVB, in Latin reference which translates, "Begone, Satan. Never tempt me with your vanities. What you offer me is evil. Drink the poison yourself." And finally, located at the top is the word Pax, which means peace. All bracelets come packaged with an informational card and the St. Benedict blessing, which your local priest can administer. This gift is for everyone you love and care about, including yourself. Available from St. Joseph Radio. Check the website at www.saintjosephradio.net.
St. Joseph Catholic Radio is proud to announce the launch of SJEN TV, the St. Joseph Evangelization Network. SJEN TV is a premier online Catholic broadcasting network providing quality Catholic programming 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have programming such as live studio interviews, St. Joe's Java speaker presentations, current Catholic issues, and the Pro-Life series. We're featuring the many talented speakers out of Orange County, California, and this Archdiocese of St. Louis, Missouri, including Professor John Gresham, Father James Mason, Karen Nokemper, Rick Hollerick, Bill Federer, and many more. To review the program list, go to sjen.tv or on Roku, SJEN TV. All this programming is free, and we are welcoming sponsorship of new programs. Find out more at sjen.tv.
And so we're back. This is St. Joseph Radio Presents, and I'm Ray Gerard. This is a program where we try to do something new and interesting every week. And this week we're speaking with David Buehrle, who was named the Catholic Man of the Year this year. And we're trying to figure out why exactly. I mean, you look like a normal person.
Well, I don't know about that.
But before the break, you were telling us about a boy that you found at 3:30 in the morning outside a convenience store. Didn't look like, he necessarily needed to be there or should have been there. And if you're just joining us, helped the father sort of, receive the sacraments and go through a passing that was, in his faith. Same for this boy's mother. and then you had this relationship with this boy, which you continue to have.
Yes.
So, yeah, if you can maybe just tell us more about this story and where from where we left off.
Well, like any human being, right? He went through his ups and downs as well, but we maintained contact. We we meet for breakfast occasionally. He'll call if he's got something going on. I always answer. I promised. So, and then the biggest thing for me is one day he told me, we were sitting and he said, "You realize you saved my life. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you." And it was a quiet moment.
Was he into doing anything that he shouldn't have been doing?
Oh, yeah.
Would he have ended up in trouble with the law?
Yes.
And so when he
Still did a little bit. I mean,
okay.
So,
But when he said that, I mean, that wasn't just figurative language. He was dead serious.
no, he was serious.
Yeah. I mean, it's just. So you said there was dead silence,
Yes.
and I don't know. I mean, do you remember how that? I don't know. Maybe you didn't even think about how much that meant at that time, or did you?
No, I was kind of taken back, really. And we finished up, and we hugged, and he went on his way. And I think I started thinking more about it after I was driving
Right.
away from the place. Like, wow, did he just really? Wow, did you hear what he said? So.
And I suppose what you think you thought maybe up to that point. Well, okay, I meet with this kid. I talk to him. I help him out. But I'm not really doing anything all that special or all that dramatic.
No, I still don't think I'm doing anything special. I promised his dad that I would take care of his boy
Right.
on his deathbed. So that's
Right.
kind of that's the thing.
I understand. I understand that. But I guess what I'm thinking of is that we really sometimes don't understand how much of an impact we can have on people's lives, even if we think we're not.
I would agree. Yep. I've had those occasions ever so often where you're like, wow, maybe I made a difference.
And it probably makes us a little bit more, I guess, desirous of being careful of like everybody we meet.
Yes.
I mean, what you're describing is a situation where you talked to this kid, you gave him some support, but didn't do anything. What you would think is special or dramatic, but yet this kid is. But just to be there for this kid, just to support him, just to help him, just to have somebody in his corner, that can make the difference between somebody, going on with a productive life or somebody going the other way.
Yeah, but I think the one thing that really makes me realize, and to this very day, he's one of a handful that maybe I've, helped, but how many did I miss? Especially growing up, especially in my young years as a policeman, how many of those opportunities passed me by? I'm a little hard on myself, but I think it's true, and I think it's you never know when that opportunity's out there, and sometimes we need to pay more attention. I do anyway, for sure.
Yeah. I know I've got a regret over a couple of boys that I helped, and I still to this day wonder if I couldn't have done a lot more. But that's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful thing to be worried now that you haven't done enough. I mean, I've read stories of saints who will say the same thing, and you're like, my goodness, they're a saint. So, and it makes you want to do more.
Yeah, it makes you want to pay more attention.
Right.
Listen.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but there must have been other occasions. I mean, we've heard a couple of stories, so far, but it sounds like, you looked for opportunities, to maybe bring the faith to people that you met in your job.
Yes. Just a quick story just
Sure.
comes to mind right now. But so I got a call one night to make a death notification. A man's teenage son, had been killed in Florida.
Oh boy.
And they never train you in the academy how to do that, right? You go to school and it doesn't tell you. And the death notifications never get easier. They
Sure.
usually get harder, I think. And I had a chaplain with me. Very interesting. And so he decided, you want me to go with you? I said, yes, please, And we go knock on the door, and the dad answers the door, and he looks at me, and he says my name.
Really?
And I'm like, sir? He goes, you don't remember me, do you? I said, no, sir, I don't. He said, come in. So I came into I kind of didn't know what was happening. I said, I'm here to tell you some bad news. He said, my son's dead, isn't he? I said, yes, sir, he is. I'm sorry. He says, will you come in the living room and pray with us? And I'm like, who is this guy? And he said, you don't remember me? I said, I don't. He said, 10 years ago, you arrested me for DWI.
Really?
And he said, on the way to the station, you gave me a big talk about how I needed to turn my life around. He said, I haven't had a drink since that day.
Seriously?
Yeah, it's one of those moments you're like, wow. We walked out and the chaplain says, that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I said, me too. But you get events like that, I think is important, but it's not me doing it. I know that. And I just always think of all the times that I passed them by,
But it is you doing it. I mean, look at it. I mean, the good that we do is not our doing. It all comes from God. I think, for lots of other people say this, but any good that I do is not me. It comes from God. But God works through us. You're the tool. He needs tools, and you're the tool. This father was. This didn't come as any surprise to this particular father. His son, I guess, had been in trouble and different things.
No, I think he'd already found out.
Okay.
Like through somebody, I don't know who, but
Okay.
it was tragic. But he was. To this day, I don't remember him.
So when you gave this father this talking to after he was picked up for the DWI, at that point, were you, were you active in your faith at this point, or maybe not so much yet?
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I was on a path.
Right.
But I talk a lot anyway, so I talk to a lot of people I've arrested. I mean, I've arrested a lot of people, and I've had a lot of conversations. So some good, some not so good, but.
But it sounds like you're looking for opportunities to bring the faith, to people when you come across them.
As I go on, like when I talk about the young man, yes, I definitely was, right? I think at the time, I don't know that I was really.
Not at that time.
Right.
Yeah.
But it still worked.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So, besides Chirp, what else have you done to sort of like keep your own faith active? I think you mentioned Acts at one point.
Yes. So the story about Acts and the gentleman that convinced me to go to Acts was one of the nominees.
Did you resist again?
Was one of the. Well, I wasn't resisting him. He's a tall guy. He was one of the nominees actually, and he's a great guy. And I was doing fine. I had things going on, but I was okay. But I guess I needed some recharging, and I kind of knew that, And this guy gets up in front of me. He walks right over to me. He's got hands about this big, and he says, looks down at me.
No, they can't really see that on the radio.
Oh, they can't. Okay, but he's got big hands. And he grabbed my hand. He says, "Hey," I said. I look up at him. And I'm like, "Yes." He's like, "You're going to the next Acts retreat." I'm like, "Absolutely."
So I see what you say. You didn't resist because
no. He knows who I'm talking about. And my kids are walking to the car going, "Who in the world is that?" I said, "I don't know, but I guess I'm going on an Acts retreat." And that's really how it happened.
Really?
Yeah.
You didn't know this guy at all?
Mm-mm. They met him from Adam.
This was at your parish?
Yeah, they were like a mission church that came to our parish.
Oh, okay.
They started the first Acts.
By looking at you, he figured you were in need?
Probably. It's probably written all over my face, I'm sure, yeah.
Okay, so you do this Acts retreat.
And that kind of recharged me. And I had been divorced, and I had met a lady who was a Southern Baptist, Tammy, wonderful woman, but she was doing her Southern Baptist, I was doing Catholic. We'd meet once in a while, but that was kind of it, right? And then when I came back, she said to me...
You came back after the Acts.
Come back after the Acts.
Right.
She's like, something happened to you. I said, well, what do you mean? Was I that bad? And she's like, no, something... She goes, I think I want to go to Acts. I'm like, go to Acts.
She said that, really?
So then she called me and said, hey, I looked into it, and they'll take Southern Baptists. I'm like, wow, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So she goes to Acts retreat. She goes on one. She comes back, and she calls me, and I about wrecked this time. She says, I'm going to be Catholic. I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah, true story. And,
wow.
So I was her sponsor in RCIA, and I really think that we grew together.
Sure.
Towards the church. We got married in the Catholic Church. It was it's fantastic. I mean, our relationship has all been based on God,
right? The
church.
It is so much better that way.
Oh, it's so easy, much easier, yes.
Yeah, it's so much better that way.
Yeah, so
that charged some energy cells.
It did.
And at this point, you're still, an active policeman,
I am.
and okay, and still trying to look for opportunities to talk to people about faith issues and things of that nature when you can.
Absolutely right. To this very day, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I got involved with being a lector and then Eucharistic minister. I enjoy that. I was able to take communion to a friend of mine's mom who just passed. She was in her 90s, and that little lady could hardly get out of her chair, but she looked forward to the Eucharist, and she would light up. Her face would light up when I'd walk through that door after church and bring her the Eucharist. It was fantastic. Yeah.
And okay, so you do this. So you used to do this for this particular woman?
Yes.
Okay.
And then she actually just passed away about a year or so ago.
Okay. And helping all these people, and because it just, hearing these stories. I mean, you have. I got to tell you, these are some good stories. You have really helped some people. Do you think that that's helped your faith? In other words, giving to people and receiving because of it?
I think it has. I mean, I think it keeps me more attentive. I mean, I find myself sometimes holding myself very accountable, almost to where because I'm clearly not perfect. I hope nobody listening would ever think that. If you knew me, you'd know I'm far from that. But
nobody. Well, of course, nobody. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, and I have my moments, and my kids will attest to that, all of them, and my wife. And anyway, so. But yeah, I think it's important, and I find myself like when one of my faults is when people ask me to do something, I just say yes, especially in the church group, and I've learned that maybe that's not always. Maybe I should say, let me think about it, let me pray on it.
That's how I ended up doing programs like this.
I get it. I get it. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, that's not a bad vice to have.
No. Yeah, you're right.
So it's made you a little bit more circumspect about what you do.
It does. I mean, it does. I mean, I teach PSR, and I love teaching middle school kids, 7th graders. It's fantastic. I didn't think I'd ever like it, but I'm hooked. I mean, it's a great relationship, and just being a part of the church, and Knights of Columbus. I was recently brought in as the Grand Knight for our council, so
you got a lot of hats.
Yeah, fish fries, and that's kind of my thing during Lent. So
with the PSR, you said 7th graders?
7th grade, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough age, tough grade.
It is. That's a tough. I would not want to be in 7th grade today.
Yeah, they have a lot of issues, don't they?
They do.
So how do you deal with that? How do you, what do you try to do?
So it's interesting. So at our school, All Saints in St. Peter's, we have 3 fantastic priests. They're very easy to talk to, and we have a great director of religious education. And so I said yes, and they give me this.
Of course you did.
Yeah, they give me this outline, like a syllabus.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't do that. There's no way.
Really?
But I started picking through it and reading it and studying. That's the one thing I found myself really doing is going back and studying. Going back and taking classes, because I want to be more firm in my faith, because I get those questions too from people, and I want to have the answer.
You've taken classes?
Yeah.
What do you mean, like seminars, like webinars? Like
no,
what?
like Paul VI Institute, different classes on.
So you've taken actual
yes
college-level classes?
Mm-hmm.
Ah.
Yeah,
okay.
and it's helped. It's helped me deliver, I think, better. I think it's helped me, talk better, prepare better. And so when I prepare the 7th graders, I realized that they've been in school all day, right? It's PSR, so they've already been in class all day.
Right.
I've been working all day in the streets.
So PSR is after a day of school?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's called the Public School of Religion now, I believe that's what they call it.
Mm-hmm.
They just changed it. So at any rate, so these young guys are used to being in class all day, so they don't really want to be there.
Sure.
And I've been in the streets all day.
You don't want to be there.
And we come up with an understanding. So my class turns into a lot of just discussing the topic at hand and how it applies to their life. And it has really opened up some incredible conversation with these 7th graders about the things they're dealing with, some of the misunderstandings they have about the Catholic Church. I think that's important because that influence is out there. And I try to reel it in best I can. And I've built some really good relationships with these young people. So I enjoy it.
So this is St. Joseph Radio Presents, coming to you live from St. Louis, Missouri, the Rome of the West. And we are here in studio talking with our special guest this week. It's David Buehrle. He was named the Catholic Man of the Year this year. And the Catholic Man of the Year award is simply an award that's given out every year to somebody in the community, somebody people probably don't know what this particular person might be doing. Somebody who flies under the radar, does just a lot of good things like inside the church, tries to help people. And this award dinner is just so useful because you hear so many things about so many good people. Who actually wins the award is, and I think all of the winners, and I think, David, you'd agree with me with this, who actually wins the award is not so important as much as, just hearing about all of these people, because it's very inspiring. You go to one of these dinners, you talk about the fact that, hey, your faith, your relationships with some of these people, inspires you to do more. Going to one of these dinners inspires you to do more. But anyways, but this year was David who happened to win the award. And I got to say, after listening to what you've told us during the first 3 quarters of this program, a lot of what you say is very inspiring. But we were talking about the fact that, you're teaching PSR to 7th graders. Right. And they have a lot of issues, and they hear a lot of things about the church, I guess, from other people. Is there anything that comes to mind? Anything you want to share? Just as an example of what these kids, a lot of times I guess maybe we don't really realize what our kids are having to deal with.
Well, I think one of the big difficulties that I see is that church attendance is not an issue, and no one believes that if you don't attend church on Sundays, it's really that big of a deal.
Oh, so they think if you can skip church, that's no big deal.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I do want to say also, as a parent, but also as a teacher, that a lot of times that problem starts at home.
Yeah.
They have to have that witness at home. Home is one of the most important places to build our faith.
If the parents aren't going to church, don't expect the kids to go.
And that's what I struggle with in trying to explain what the Catholic Church teaches, right? And they have so many friends and kids that aren't going to church, and they're spending weekends camping or doing, and it's just not a focus. So that's a big hurdle for me to try to overcome.
So how do you try to deal with that? You just try to, as best you can, I guess.
I mean, you got to try to get cooperation from the parents. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the parents are good. I'm not saying nobody's bad. People have things in their lives. I get that, right? But it has become more of a focus. And so I just try to welcome them, come on Sundays, you can come sit with me and my family, try to get them active and maybe serving or doing something.
Sure. Which is a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, if you can get them.
If you can get it.
Yeah.
It's just not the popular thing, When I get a kid in class and I say, okay, why are you in here? Because that's my first question. And the kid raises his hand.
Because I got to be.
When the kids say, I have to be here because my parents are making me, that's a perfect segue into everything else, I think.
How so?
Because I explained to them, well, your parents say that because why do you think they want you here?
Sure.
Talk about that. Why do you think it's important to be here?
Right.
Because in 7th grade, it's not about life eternal. You know what I mean? It's about getting through the next 30 minutes on your phone or whatever the case may be. So they've got a lot of obstacles to overcome.
Yeah. And what about the Eucharist? I mean, if they're not feeling a need to go to Mass, I mean, is there a sense? Do you get a sense from the kids that the Eucharist, okay, the church teaches, hey, it's the real, body and blood, but I mean, do you get a sense of that?
I mean, we talk about that. I think it's all in that same realm of it's just not that important at that age, at 7th grade. And I mean, I look back when I was in 7th grade. I can't remember that far back now, but I don't know how I felt. Somebody has to be telling them this, and it has to be more than just a PSR teacher. It has to be their family and their friends. Their relatives, whoever it is. People have got to start being more focused on that.
And do you have much of an opportunity to interact with the parents?
We do. We speak to the parents frequently. We have these things called faith nights that are really interesting, where they bring the parents in actually during PSR, and we kind of pray together and we talk about certain topics. So I think that's made a big difference. I really do.
That does sound like a really cool idea. Do you know other parishes do that, or do you think that's like
our
maybe your idea? I mean,
No,
at
it wasn't
your
me.
parish? Not no, but I mean at your parish. Do you think that's?
So I don't. The director of religious education, Mary Grace, started this last year, and I think it's a wonderful thing to try to remind parents, that we're all in this together. I don't think sometimes we're hard enough, to be fair. I don't, but
Understood. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you started it last year.
Yeah, so last year was like the first, I think so.
Yeah, and you're starting to see, some, I guess, results from it already, or what are your initial impressions? Because it hasn't been very long.
No, I mean, I think you look at the younger kids and you say, wow, that's cool. They're getting it, right? Because they enjoy it. It's fun. The parents are like, oh, they're cute. That's really neat to have them there. And then as you get older, it's becoming more of something you have to do type thing, right? So I think just seeing the parents more and giving them the opportunity to go to Mass more, going to Mass together as a PSR school with the parents, I think super, super important. And that's another thing that our Director of Religious Education started out. So I think it's just in the process. We'll see what happens.
So here you are. You've, as you described, been away from the church for a while, gotten back to the church, have, tried to help a lot of people with your faith, tried to, as you say, sort of be a good Catholic yourself. What do you think going forward, the years ahead? What do you think you want to try to do? What would you just keep doing, what you've been doing? What do you...
Well, I don't know how much longer I can do this full-time job because I'm getting old and tired. But anyway, I think honestly I don't know, wherever God takes me,
Like your father said?
Yes. In fact, my dad, I don't want to leave this out because he was we didn't know he was dying. We knew there was something wrong with him. So I would bring him communion every Sunday. And I went over this one Sunday. I gave him communion. We talked. I go to give him the Eucharist, and he grabs my hand, which he's never done this. And he looks at me and he says, Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say the words, and my soul shall be healed. He had this strict focus on the Eucharist, staring at it.
Oh, so he grabbed your hand?
He did.
Because your hand was holding the Eucharist?
Correct. And he took it, and it was just a weird moment for me. I'm like, that was very unusual. And so I kissed him on the head and left and took the kids to soccer. And
now, is he fully lucid?
Oh no, he's completely. He had broke his back, is what he did. So he had a hard time walking.
Okay.
He had some.
But totally lucid.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And
but still, he's staring at the Eucharist.
I mean, he was fixated on it, and I'll never forget it. And took the kids to soccer, went to work, and my mom called me that morning and said he had passed.
Really?
He was unresponsive, and so I told her to call 911, and he didn't make it. So
that was like
those are the last words he's ever spoken to me. So every time I go to communion, that's the first thing. That's the thing I think about every time the priest says that. Every single Mass. So he got me because he's with me every Mass. I'm sure of that.
That is very special. That is very special. Dave, I want to really thank you for being here with us today. I want to thank you for giving us some of your time, sharing us, some of your life and what you've done. This is St. Joseph Radio Presents. We've been here talking with David Buehrle, who was recognized as the Catholic Man of the Year just this past year in the St. Louis area. And he's been describing to us, this passion that he's had, even though he's met resistance from people, authorities trying to tell him not to do it, to try to engage people in their faith, and just in all the activities that he's done. Anybody can tell you have a really strong faith right now, and you're helping a lot of people. And I really want to thank you for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Very good. God bless.
You've been listening to St. Joseph Radio Presents from the Rome of the West, St. Louis, Missouri. If you would like to join us in our evangelization efforts, you can order a copy of today's broadcast or any of our past programs by visiting us on our website, stjosephradio.net. That's SAINT, josephradio.net. Or call us 636-447-6000. It's all at your fingertips to help us evangelize the world, bringing the good news of Christ to everyone you meet and change one soul at a time. Thank you for your prayers and support. Until next time, may God bless you and your family. This has been a presentation of St. Joseph Radio Presents.